brief two-pager, so hopefully you'll have questions or not, it's entirely up to you, but just to cover the key points. So if we start, basically the supply chain consumables on the ERLA framework have been massively hit as a result of the pandemic, Brexit and shortages in raw materials. So thank you, Tony Morris. First off is gloves. As everyone knows, this has been an absolute nightmare to get hold of. We are starting to see improvements, but the impact was primarily for increased gloves globally, and manufacture restricted predominantly to 5 main manufacturers in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam and China. They also suffered with reduced workforces due to the COVID outbreak. Now, Top Glove, based in Malaysia, is the world's biggest glove manufacturer. And at one point they were down to, I think it was 25% of their workforce, because the rest were struck down with COVID and also social distancing. So that's obviously hit the world. Supply chains went absolutely mental. And a stat that I threw out probably since last summer, at the peak, gloves were, for the NHS as a case alone, on an average year, they would be ordering 1.5 million gloves on an average year. At the height of COVID, which hopefully is a relatively distant memory, they were ordering 1.6 million per week, and that is purely just NHS. That's not dentists, that's not care homes, that's nothing, that is just NHS. So if you magnify that across the UK alone, and then in the wider global arena, it's not the right word, but anyway, it's just phenomenal, the draw on the demand. So anyway, that was the situation then. The availability is starting to improve. My suppliers on the ERLA framework have advised that over the next 6 months, they're looking at seeing more products go onto the shelves rather than the minute they hit them, they go out to fulfill a back order. So it's looking promising. It's not over, but it's getting there. Unfortunately, it's also been hit with the raw materials shortage. Now, this was first flagged pre-COVID, about a year before COVID. We were advised that there was an issue. And obviously with the mass demand, it's accelerated. We're okay, touch wood at the moment, but it is going to be an issue longer term. So that's that. Pricing. I'm rattling through these points. I need to speak slower. Pricing still remains high, but the suppliers on the frameworks have expected that they'll gradually see a return to the more normal position in mid-2022, next year. They have said that they're probably not going to see it go to the framework levels we had at award, but it is going to drop massively. I think in the peak we were getting suppliers coming in advising it could be £19 a box, where it was previously, I'd say, half that, maybe £5. It's phenomenally high at the moment. It is reducing, and framework is helping to manage that. What they can't do is support people that want to fulfill a massive order. They're having to look at it in a reasonable and based on historic ordering profiles. They can't just give you a load more than you usually would require. They're trying to be reasonable and spread it out amongst everybody. One thing they have said is that they've noticed a lot of scattergun ordering, where people are placing their orders with everybody in the hope that one of them comes through earlier. So hopefully that will start to calm down as people get their orders. So that's gloves. Tips. Production of tips is still at the maximum capacity. We've got framework suppliers that manufacture tips, and they've gone on to 24/7 manufacturing, and they still can't meet demand. There's a raw material shortage for resins and filters, and again, a lot of these are saying that there's improved availability or anticipated improved availability by early next year. And again, this also is part of the scattergun ordering. We think people will calm themselves down a bit more and get their orders in place as per norm, rather than an emergency that they're trying to cover all bases at the moment. So next one is, as I said, it's a very brief presentation, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. Other product issues, PCR consumables. There's a supply issue persistent due to issues with Corning, but back orders are reducing. Also, in line with Corning, they've issued another price rise. I'm looking into it at the moment, but I have had the advice that this is a price that even the suppliers can't seem to negotiate down. It is what it is, which is my least favourite phrase of the COVID era. They have said prices will be held until December 2022, so it will be one price increase, which is in line with the framework, but unfortunately it will be coming in very shortly. And then pasta pipettes, there's an impact to LDPA, which I had to look up because I didn't know the phrase, low density polyethylene, raw material, and it's a price rises due to shortages. In the main, there is an awful lot of price rises as a result of raw material shortage on this framework. We're doing what we can with suppliers to try and manage that out as best we can, and if we can, to spread it out or delay the increase coming in. But it is getting to the point where we've delayed it as best we can and pushed it away as much as we can, where suppliers are now starting to take a hit, which makes it unfeasible to continue on the framework. So rather than have them walk away from the framework, we're going to have to start accepting things. It's not ideal. It's constantly being reviewed with the supply base, and we're just looking at how we can manage it going forward. Hopefully, once we get into a more settled state, we can have those conversations and look at what we can do long term. But to be fair, especially in the glove situation, at the peaks, and I keep referring to the peaks that I know we're no longer in, but it's still a knock-on effect. There were suppliers at the doors of these manufacturers basically bartering, and whoever paid the highest got the products, and that's what we're seeing knocking onto the frameworks. It's not an ideal scenario, but it is whoever shouts and pays the most gets the product. It's calming down, but that was for historical reference. Next item then is shipment, and I'm sure you're all aware there's been a shortage of courier drivers, HGV drivers in the main. There's been a shortage, and I think with the ping-a-thon that seems to be going on lately, folks are just not able to turn up for work because they've got to isolate, and it's impacting this service even more. So both shipment and just ad hoc deliveries are getting hit big time. Hopefully again that will calm down, but it is there and it is an issue. The other item on shortages was the shortage of containers. Obviously the container situation was an issue beforehand, but with more products needing to come into the UK from, say, Malaysia, China, etc., they needed more containers. And straight after the initial big lockdowns, containers were all over the world, not in the place they should have been. And that impacted. They needed, obviously, logistics to get them back to where they needed to go to make sure they were filled and ship them back to the UK. And then fill those containers to ship them back. If there's nothing in the container, they don't tend to ship them back, so they're stuck in the wrong place. Can't get all the orders out from where they need to go. Anyway, I'm waffling on about containers. That's not the key thing on this presentation. The last thing on my list is Brexit and import to the UK. Now, there's still products delayed coming into the UK. I think initially it was an issue with paperwork. There's now associated import costs for, this is about the rules of origin, where if it's 80% manufactured in the EU, they still need their paperwork. It's starting to improve. I think suppliers are finally getting up to speed with what they need to do, and end users as well, aware of what paperwork they may need to fulfill. It's not always the case, but sometimes it is. It's an education process, I think, and it will just take a little bit longer. I mean, we're 7 months in, and we're getting there. But it's starting to improve. But they're also, as to mitigate that, suppliers are increasing their stock holding within the UK. And hopefully it will start to ease. So these are the key points within the consumables issue. But if there is any questions, by all means, please raise them. That's the sort of end of my official presentation, but happy to have further conversations.
Hi, thanks, Danielle. If anybody has any questions, they can leave them in the chat function. Just give it a little bit of time to see if anybody wants to leave a question. No. Is there anything else, Danielle, you think needs raising just before we finish?
No, I think, to be honest, they are the key items, really.
So we've just had a question regarding tissue culture plasticware. Has this also been affected?
It's not been officially drawn to my attention, but I can look into it and get back to you to confirm.
Yeah, I'll get that passed over. So just got a couple of people joining, a little bit late. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, we've got Dave Yates from NWPC asking, are there alternative materials from which gloves could be made?
There are alternative materials, but it's for different types of gloves. And I think, as I understand it, because of these 5 key suppliers are the ones that have always done it, they've got all the certification and the compliance. And as I understand, the process to get it all compliant and certified is extremely long. They are looking at alternatives, but at the moment, for what we need and for what is on the framework, they haven't identified a suitable, robust alternative at this stage. But I know it is something they're looking at, because I don't think anyone wants to be stung with this situation again.
We've had a question from Sarah Yude saying, just had info, number 96 well plates are available. Not sure if that's a question or a statement.
That might be referring to the tissue culture plasticware.
We've got a question from Antonio Ramirez, just asking, for members, are you getting lots of cold calls from non-framework suppliers? That's more a general question for members, I think. Jessica Lingley's asked, is there a list of items that are difficult to obtain?
There isn't a finite list. I was asking the framework suppliers if they could provide a list of things they did have in stock, but I can obviously ask if they've got a key, sort of a hot list of things that are pretty difficult to get, and I can definitely get hold of that and circulate it.
Yeah, we can circulate that to everyone who's attended today.
Okay.
Got another question from Dave Yates, just asking, do used rubber gloves get reutilised in the production process in the same way that paper does?
No, they, as I understand it, they can't do gloves can't be recycled because of what they're being used for. As a rule, they have to be disposed of. So I think there is Kimberly Clark, as I understand, have got a recycling procedure, or a procedure. I think that's the best thing to say. But again, if the gloves have been used in something that is dealing with waste materials, they can't necessarily recycle them. But there is initiatives out there, and it is something that I focus on with the framework suppliers on my reviews, just to get an idea of what initiatives are out there, because we're all mindful that also with this increased volume of gloves that is going out, that is being used, I mean, it's smashing up any single-use plastics criteria or caps that you want. And we definitely want to get that out of. We want to stop sending that all to landfill if we can. So it's a hot topic on any framework review that we're having at the moment. Totally agree with Julia.